They laughed when the Korean Mafia boss slapped his maid. 20 men in tailored suits. Crystal glasses raised. Phones recording. The kind of crowd you'd find at any elite Los Angeles gathering lawyers, politicians, businessmen who'd learned that power in America wasn't just about money. It was about spectacle, and humiliation was the finest entertainment money could buy. To them, she was nothing, just another quiet black woman in a burgundy uniform, head bowed, voice small, the kind of person who cleaned their toilets, pressed their shirts, and disappeared into the walls when not needed. Someone you could humiliate without consequences, someone whose pain was background noise to their champagne-soaked evenings. What they didn't know was that she was counting her breath. 4 counts in, hold for 7, 8 counts out, because people who are truly broken don't control themselves that carefully. Her name was Christina Hale, though no one in this mansion had bothered to ask. To Chairman Kang Min-jae and his associates, she was simply the maid, or you there, or occasionally, nothing at all, just a gesture, a snap of fingers, an expectation that she would materialize with whatever they needed. She had spent 8 months cleaning their blood off marble floors. Not metaphorical blood, actual blood. From the nosebleeds of men who'd failed to pay on time. From the split knuckles of enforcers who'd delivered messages with their fists. 8 months listening to deals that destroyed lives. Spoken in rapid Korean they assumed she couldn't understand. 8 months, watching young women delivered through the service entrance like packages. Their eyes hollow with terror. 8 months of silence. Silence made her invisible. Invisibility made her dangerous. And tonight, something had changed. Because behind the locked basement door they thought no one noticed, the one she'd found standing open 3 nights ago were women who couldn't afford her silence anymore. 7 of them, ages ranging from 17 to 24. Passports confiscated. Families threatened continents away. Hope extinguished so thoroughly that when Christina had appeared in the doorway, they'd looked at her with the blank acceptance of people who'd learned that every open door was just another cage. She couldn't save them by talking to the police. Kang owned half the precinct. She couldn't run with them. There was nowhere in Los Angeles. His reach didn't extend. From Koreatown to Beverly Hills, from the docks of Long Beach to the clubs on Sunset Boulevard, Kang's organization had roots. No. If those women were going to survive, Christina needed to become someone she'd buried 12 years ago. Someone who didn't bow. Someone who didn't break. Someone who knew exactly how much force it took to shatter a kneecap, collapse a windpipe, or reduce a man's arrogance to whimpering confession. The man who owned this mansion believed fear was power. He believed control was loud, demonstrated through raised voices and raised hands. He believed the people beneath him would stay beneath him forever, that the natural order was immutable as gravity. He was wrong, and when he raised his hand in front of everyone tonight, when he tried to remind her of her place in front of his assembled court, he would finally learn the truth that champions knew. Some people aren't weak. They're waiting, and when they stop pretending, empires fall. Christina moved through the mansion's kitchen with practiced efficiency, her dark skin gleaming with perspiration under the fluorescent lights. The dinner party was in full swing upstairs in the grand ballroom, but down here in the service areas, it was controlled chaos. 3 other staff members rushed past her: Rosa, the cook, Marcus, the house manager, and young Tommy, barely 18, who'd started last month. None of them knew what she was planning. None of them could know. His less than break time equals 85 seconds. His greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. His greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. His greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. His greater than. The mansion perched above Beverly Hills like a crown, all glass and steel and old money transformed into new architecture. From the street, you couldn't see it. Privacy walls, security gates, trees imported from Korea specifically because Chairman Kang missed the shape of their branches. Christina Hale had been working there for 8 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days. Not that anyone asked. She'd learned the rhythm of the house the way a prisoner learns the rhythm of lockup. Wake at 5 a.m., prepare breakfast for 12, clean the main floors before 9 a.m., handle laundry by noon, prepare for whatever evening entertainment Kang had planned. Dinners, card games, business meetings that always ended with someone bleeding. Her uniform was burgundy with white trim, old-fashioned, deliberately so. Kang liked the aesthetic, made him feel like the patriarch of some dynasty, surrounded by servants who knew their place. The other staff members wore similar uniforms, though Christina's fit differently. She'd had to take hers in at the shoulders and out at the thighs. 12 years without training had changed her body, but not as much as people might think. Muscle memory was a real thing. So was rage, when you kept it cold enough. "You there?" Christina looked up from where she'd been polishing the banister of the grand staircase. 3rd floor, the one that led to Kang's private quarters and the rooms where he entertained his special guests. Victor Park stood at the top of the stairs, Kang's lieutenant, 2nd-generation Korean-American, educated at USC, fluent in both violence and corporate law. He wore Tom Ford suits and Audemars Piguet watches, and had the kind of handsome face that made people trust him right before he destroyed them. "Yes, sir." Christina kept her voice soft, deferential. "Everything they expected. Chairman wants the tasting room prepared. We have guests arriving at 7. 20 place settings, full service." "Of course, sir." "And Christina?" Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Try not to fuck it up this time." Chairman's still annoyed about the wine incident. The wine incident. 3 weeks ago, she'd served a 2015 Chateau Margaux, when Kang had wanted the 2016. Same vineyard, same varietal, one vintage year different. He'd slapped her in front of 8 dinner guests. Open palm across her face, hard enough that her ears rang, and blood filled her mouth where her teeth caught the inside of her cheek. The guests had laughed. Phones had come out. Someone posted it on a private social media account with the caption, "When the help forgets their place." Christina had bowed, apologized, cleaned up the spilled wine with a smile that never wavered. Then she'd gone to her room and done 800 push-ups until her arms shook and the rage crystallized into something cold and patient and absolutely lethal. "I understand, sir," she said now. "It won't happen again." Victor studied her for a moment, something almost like curiosity in his expression. "You know, most people don't last 2 months here. Chairman goes through staff like he goes through everything else. But you," he tilted his head, "you're different. It's like nothing touches you." "I just do my job, sir." "Yeah." Victor's smile sharpened. "That's what I mean." He walked away, Italian leather shoes clicking against marble that Christina had scrubbed on her hands and knees just that morning. She waited until he disappeared around the corner. Then she straightened, rolled her shoulders back, and felt the old readiness move through her body like electricity through a wire. Tonight. It had to be tonight, because 3 nights ago, she'd found the basement door open. The mansion had 3 basements. One was for wine storage, temperature-controlled, worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. One was for mechanical systems, HVAC, generators, security equipment. The 3rd basement didn't officially exist on the architectural plans. Christina had discovered it by accident. She'd been carrying laundry down the service corridor when she heard crying. Soft, desperate. The kind of crying people do when they've learned that screaming doesn't help. The sound came from behind a door she'd been told led to storage. The door was never supposed to be unlocked, but that night, someone had been careless. Christina had pushed it open. The stairs descended into darkness. Motion sensor lights flickered on as she moved down, her heart hammering in a way it hadn't since her competitive days. At the bottom was a corridor. At the end of the corridor was a heavy steel door with an electronic lock. The door was cracked open. Inside were 7 women. They were in what looked like a converted storage area. Mattresses on the floor. 1 bathroom. No windows. 1 bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. The youngest couldn't have been more than 17. The oldest maybe 24. Different ethnicities. 3 looked Southeast Asian. 2 Eastern European. 1 Latina. 1 mixed race. All of them had the same look in their eyes. The look of people who'd been sold. Christina had stood in the doorway for 30 seconds that felt like 30 hours. The women stared back at her, waiting, wondering if she was staff or client, helper or tormentor. "I'm sorry," Christina had whispered in English, then Korean, then Spanish. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't. The door at the top of the stairs had opened. Footsteps. Christina had run. She'd barely made it back to the laundry room before Victor appeared, his phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Korean about the shipment and delivery schedules and breaking in the new ones. He'd walked right past her. Christina had pressed her back against the washing machine and counted her breath. 4 in, 7 hold, 8 out. The same breathing technique her sabumnim, her master instructor, had taught her 15 years ago when she was 19 and competing for the Korean national team. The technique that had carried her through Olympic qualifiers, through military hand-to-hand combat training, through the night her training partner had died and the scandal that followed. The technique that had kept her alive when she wanted to die. That night, Christina had made a decision. Silence was survival. Yes, but silence was also complicity, and she was done surviving. The grand ballroom gleamed under crystal chandeliers imported from Austria, 20-foot ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Los Angeles, the city spreading out below like scattered diamonds, all the way to the Pacific Ocean on a clear day. Tonight was clear. Christina moved along the perimeter of the room, setting places at the long dining table. Fine china, sterling silver, crystal glasses that cost more than her monthly salary. Everything precisely positioned, everything perfect. She could hear Kang in the adjacent room, speaking Korean on the phone. His voice carried he liked people to hear him, liked the reminder of his power echoing through halls. Tell him payment is due Wednesday. No extensions. If he protests, remind him about his daughter's school in Santa Monica. Remind him we know her schedule. Christina's hands didn't shake as she folded napkins into elaborate shapes. 4 in, 7 hold, 8 out. And the shipment from Vancouver? Good. Have them delivered to the secondary location first. We'll move them after the buyers inspect merchandise. Merchandise? He called them merchandise. Christina placed the last fork with mathematical precision. Then she stepped back to survey the table. Perfect. Everything perfect. Just the way Kang liked it. You. She turned. Kang stood in the doorway, phone still in hand. He was 53, stocky, with the kind of face that had probably been handsome once before. Age and cruelty hardened it. He wore a suit that cost $10,000 and a Rolex that cost $50. His hair was graying at the temples in a way that probably made him look distinguished to people who didn't know what he was. Yes, Chairman. Christina kept her eyes down. Submissive. Small. The wine. I want the 2009 Opus 1 for the first course, the 2016 Margot for the main, the 1990 Chateau d'Yquem for dessert. Can you remember that? Or should I write it down for you? I can remember, Chairman. Can you? Kang walked closer. Because 3 weeks ago, you couldn't remember something simple. Made me look foolish in front of my guests. I apologize, Chairman. It won't happen again. No, it won't. Kang stood directly in front of her now, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and cloying. Do you know why it won't happen again? Because I'll be more careful, Chairman. Because you understand consequences. Kang reached out and lifted her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. His grip was casual, proprietary. I could fire you. I could have Victor break your fingers. I could do many things, but I'm patient. I believe in second chances. Do you appreciate that? Christina's pulse was steady, controlled. Yes, Chairman. Very much. Good. He released her chin with a small push that made her step back. Guests arrive at 7. Everything must be perfect. This is an important dinner. People are watching. People are always watching, Christina. Do you understand? Yes, Chairman. Do you? Kang smiled. I don't think you do. I don't think you understand how small you are in this world, how easily you could disappear, how no one would look for you, no one would care. Christina said nothing. That's better. Kang nodded. Silence suits you. Remember that tonight. He walked away, phone already back to his ear, barking orders in Korean to someone who sounded terrified. Christina stood in the empty ballroom, surrounded by luxury that could feed 1,000 families, and felt the old fire kindle in her chest. 12 years ago, she'd been different. 12 years ago, she'd stood on Olympic training mats in Seoul, with her name on everyone's lips. Christina Hale, the American-Korean prodigy, the black girl who'd learned Taekwondo from her military father stationed in Seoul, who'd trained until her knuckles bled and her body moved like water. The fighter who'd earned respect through sweat and skill and absolute refusal to quit. The fighter who'd walked away after her training partner died during a sparring session gone wrong. The fighter who'd been blamed. The fighter who'd learned that justice was something people talked about but rarely delivered. She'd disappeared after that, left Korea, left competition, left everything, and found herself cleaning toilets in Los Angeles. Christina moved through the ballroom toward the kitchen, her reflection ghosting across the windows, a black woman in a burgundy uniform, hair tucked under a white cap, eyes downcast, invisible, harmless, forgotten. They had no idea who she used to be, and in 3 hours, they were going to remember that predators weren't always the ones with power. Sometimes, predators were the ones who'd learned to wait. Is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than. Chairman Kang Min-jae had been born in Busan, South Korea, in 1972, during a period when the country was clawing its way from post-war poverty into industrial power. His father had been a dock worker. His mother had cleaned offices. Neither had lived to see him become wealthy. He'd emigrated to Los Angeles in 1995 with $300 and a contact who promised legitimate work. The work wasn't legitimate, but it was profitable. And Kang learned early that morality was a luxury purchased by people who'd never been hungry. By 2008, he controlled most of the Korean organized crime in Southern California. By 2015, he'd expanded into human trafficking, drug distribution, and money laundering. By 2025, he was effectively untouchable. His lawyer was a federal judge's brother. His accountant had ties to 3 governors, and his Christmas card list included police captains and city councilmen. Power, Kang believed, was about control. Control was about fear, and fear was best demonstrated publicly. Tonight's dinner was proof of that philosophy. The guests began arriving at 6:45 p.m. Christina stood in the kitchen, listening to the front entrance doors open and close, voices echoing through the marble foyer. She recognized some of them from previous dinners. Victor Park, of course. James Song, who ran Kang's drug operations. Robert Kim, the money launderer. David Park, no relation to Victor, who managed real estate holdings. But tonight there were new voices. Politicians, from the sound of them. Someone mentioned Sacramento. Someone else laughed about plausible deniability. Christina carried the first course from the kitchen to the dining room. A delicate Korean appetizer, hobak jeon, zucchini pancakes, that the cook had spent 2 hours preparing. She moved silently around the table, placing plates, refilling water glasses, existing as part of the furniture. 20 men, no women except the staff. Christina, Rosa in the kitchen, and a young woman named May, who'd been hired specifically to serve drinks and look pretty. May was 22, fresh from San Francisco, and had no idea what kind of house she was working in. Christina had tried to warn her once. May hadn't listened. People rarely did until it was too late. Gentlemen, Kang stood at the head of the table, raising his wine glass. Welcome. Tonight we celebrate partnership, growth, the expansion of our operations into new territory. Sacramento has proven receptive to our proposals. Laughter around the table. A middle-aged white man in a gray suit, someone Christina didn't recognize, raised his glass with a politician's practiced smile. To mutual prosperity, the man said. To mutual prosperity, the table echoed. Christina poured wine, moving from guest to guest. She kept her movements smooth, efficient, invisible. When she reached Kang's seat, he didn't acknowledge her, just held out his glass expectantly. She poured the 2009 Opus 1 with steady hands. This is excellent, the politician said, examining his glass. Chairman, You have impeccable taste. In all things, Kang agreed. Wine, art, business. His eyes flicked to Christina. Even staff, though sometimes training is required. More laughter. Christina moved back to her position against the wall, hands clasped behind her back, eyes down. You know what I love about America? Kang continued, settling back in his chair like a king on a throne. In Korea, there are still rules, old families, old ways, honor and shame, and all that traditional nonsense. But here, he gestured broadly, here, everything is negotiable. Everything has a price. You just need to know who to pay and who to scare. Victor added from his seat at Kang's right hand. Fear and money. Kang nodded. The two currencies that matter. Everything else is theater. The dinner progressed through multiple courses. Christina moved between kitchen and dining room, serving, clearing, refilling. She listened to them talk about shipments and territories and problem resolution. She heard them joke about the merchandise coming from Vancouver young women, from context, probably Vietnamese or Cambodian. She heard them discuss which clubs would be best for breaking them in. And through it all, she breathed. 4 in, 7 hold, 8 out. At 8:30 p.m., something happened that Christina had been expecting but still made her stomach tighten. Kang stood and walked to her position against the wall. The conversation at the table continued, but several men watched with interest, sensing entertainment. Christina, Kang said quietly, conversationally, like they were discussing the weather. Yes, Chairman. Do you enjoy working here? She met his eyes a risk, but he'd addressed her directly. Yes, Chairman. Very much. Even after the wine incident? Kang smiled. You remember the wine incident, don't you? Yes, Chairman. Tell my guests what happened. Christina's pulse stayed steady. I served the wrong vintage, Chairman. You corrected me. I corrected her. Kang turned to address the table, his voice rising slightly. In front of 8 guests, because she embarrassed me, because she was careless. And do you know what she did? No one answered. They were all watching now, phones starting to emerge from pockets. She apologized. Kang continued. She bowed. She accepted her mistake, because she understands something fundamental about the world. He turned back to Christina. What do you understand, Christina? She knew what he wanted to hear, that I'm fortunate to work for you, Chairman, that my position here is a privilege, not a right. Exactly. Kang nodded, pleased. A privilege, one that can be revoked at any time. He paused. Tonight, you served the wrong wine again. Christina's breath caught, genuinely surprised. She'd been meticulous. She'd triple-checked. The 2009 Opus 1 for the first course. She'd poured from the correct bottle. She was certain. I'm sorry, Chairman, but I don't. Are you arguing with me? No, Chairman. The slap came without warning. Open palm. Right cheek. Hard enough that Christina's head snapped to the side and the world tilted. She tasted blood where her teeth cut the inside of her mouth. Her cap fell off, tumbling to the marble floor. Phones were definitely out now. The room had gone silent except for the slight hum of the chandeliers overhead. Christina stood very still, feeling the sting spread across her face, feeling the familiar rage build in her chest like a living thing. She forced her hands to stay at her sides, forced her breathing to remain controlled. 4 in 7 hold. 8 out. Do you want to know something interesting? Kang said, his voice still conversational. I lied. You served the correct wine, but I needed to make a point to my guests tonight. About control, about power, about how the people beneath us need to stay beneath us. He walked in a slow circle around her, like a predator circling prey. You see, gentlemen, this is what I mean about America. In my father's Korea, you respected the servant because they were human. Here, we've learned better. Here, we understand that respect is earned through power, and power is demonstrated through action. Kang stopped directly behind Christina. She could feel his breath on the back of her neck. Kneel, he said quietly. For a moment, Christina didn't move, couldn't move, because something inside her was screaming, and she wasn't sure she could control it much longer. I said kneel. Christina's knees bent. She lowered herself to the marble floor. The stone was cold against her legs. Her uniform felt too tight. The room felt too hot. Good, Kang said. You learn. Slowly, but you learn. Laughter around the table. Not all of them. The politician looked vaguely uncomfortable, which meant he at least had the decency to pretend disapproval. But most of them were smiling, enjoying the show. You may stand, Kang said after a moment that felt like eternity. Christina rose. Slowly, carefully. She bent to retrieve her fallen cap, aware that every movement was being recorded, that this humiliation would be shared later, laughed about, added to some private collection of moments that proved their superiority. Return to your duties, Kang ordered. And Christina, next time I call you out for a mistake, real or imagined, you will accept it gracefully. Do you understand? Yes, Chairman. Louder. Yes, Chairman. Good. Kang returned to his seat, accepting congratulations from his guests like he'd just performed some impressive feat, rather than assaulting a woman who couldn't fight back without losing everything. Christina walked to the kitchen on legs that felt distant from her body. Rosa looked up from where she was plating the main course, her expression sympathetic but helpless. Marcus, the house manager, carefully avoided her eyes. They'd all seen things like this before. This was normal here. Christina picked up the next course, checked her reflection in the polished steel of the refrigerator door. Her cheek was red, swelling slightly. By tomorrow, it would bruise. Good. Let it bruise. Let her remember exactly what this place was. Let her remember why she was about to burn it to the ground. She carried the plates back into the dining room, moving silently, invisibly. The conversation had shifted to business, something about a shipment arriving in Long Beach, about distribution networks, about payoffs and police schedules. Christina served the main course. Beef Wellington. Expensive, perfectly prepared. She poured more wine. The 2016 Margot this time. The correct bottle. Not that it mattered. And as she moved around the table, something changed in her body. The old stance came back first. The way her weight distributed slightly more on her back leg. The way her shoulders aligned. The way her hands, though carrying plates, suddenly remembered what they were built for. Christina had trained in Taekwondo for 15 years before she quit. She'd studied under Master Park Sung-ho, one of the finest instructors in Seoul. She'd competed internationally. She'd worked with the Korean military, teaching hand-to-hand combat to special operations soldiers. She'd learned 73 different ways to disable an opponent. And tonight, she was going to use at least 20 of them. But not yet. Not quite yet. She needed them relaxed, confident, drunk on wine and power and the certainty of their invulnerability. So she bowed when Kang snapped his fingers. She apologized when he criticized her. She shrank and diminished and made herself small. And she waited, because champions know something that tyrants never learn. The fight isn't won in the first moment. It's won in the preparation, in the patience, in the absolute certainty that when you move with total commitment. And Christina was getting ready to move. Is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than in Dela, Seoul, South Korea. 13 years ago. Christina Hale had been 23 years old the first time she understood what it meant to kill someone. She hadn't meant to. That was what she told the investigators later, what she repeated to the Korean Olympic Committee, what she whispered to herself in the dark hours when sleep wouldn't come. She hadn't meant to, but intentions didn't resurrect the dead. His name was David Park, no relation to the various Parks in Kang's organization. David had been her training partner for 3 years, paired by Master Park Sung-ho because they were the same height, similar weight class, and both had the kind of obsessive dedication that made champions. They'd been practicing advanced combinations in the Olympic training facility in Seoul. It was late past midnight. They did this sometimes, when the official coaches had gone home, when they could push harder without oversight, just them and the mats and the relentless pursuit of perfection. Christina had been demonstrating a spinning hook kick Nairyo Chagi, one of the most dangerous techniques in Taekwondo, When executed properly, the kick generated tremendous force from the rotation of the hips and the whip of the leg. Competitive fighters aimed for the torso, or, in Olympic sparring, the headgear, but they weren't wearing protective gear that night, and Christina's kick connected wrong. The sound was wrong first, not the dull thud of impact against a body, but something sharper, harder. David dropped, not backward, the way you fell after a clean body shot. He dropped straight down, his legs simply stopping their function, his body collapsing like someone had cut his strings. Christina had stood there, her legs still extended from the kick, watching David's eyes roll back in his head, watching blood pool beneath him from where his skull had cracked against the mat's concrete foundation. She'd called for help. She'd performed CPR while waiting for the ambulance, her hands slick with blood, her voice hoarse from screaming. But David was dead before the paramedics arrived. The investigation lasted 6 weeks. The Korean authorities determined it was an accident. 2 athletes training without proper supervision or safety equipment. Master Park received a formal reprimand. The training facility implemented new regulations, and Christina was told she could continue competing if she wished. She didn't wish, because what the official investigation didn't include was what happened after. David's family, wealthy, connected, influential, had demanded justice. Not in court, where accidents were accidents, but in the court of public opinion. They told media outlets that Christina had been jealous of David's success, that she'd deliberately attacked him, that foreign fighters, particularly black fighters, didn't understand the honor and discipline of traditional Taekwondo. The allegations were never proven because they weren't true, but truth was negotiable when grief demanded a target. Christina's sponsors dropped her. Her Olympic qualifying status was postponed pending further review. Other training partners began avoiding her. Master Park, who'd taught her since she was 14, who'd been like a father to her, had looked at her with something that might have been doubt, just for a moment. But that moment was enough. Christina had left Korea 3 weeks after David's death. She'd returned to the United States with her mother, who was dying of cancer and needed care. She'd worked 3 jobs to pay medical bills, cleaning offices at night, teaching basic self-defense at community centers, doing whatever she could find. Her mother died 8 months later. Christina was 24, alone, and hollowed out by grief and guilt, and the slow understanding that the world wasn't fair, and justice was something that happened to other people. She'd stopped training after that, stopped competing, stopped being the person who'd stood on mats with her name whispered like prophecy. She got quieter, smaller. She took jobs that didn't require her to be seen or remembered. She built a life of invisibility, because visibility meant vulnerability, and she was done being vulnerable. For 12 years, Christina Hale was no one, and then she'd found the basement door open, and remembered who she used to be. Beverly Hills, present day, 10:47 p.m. Christina stood in the small room she rented in the staff quarters, 8 by 10 feet, a single bed, a dresser, a window overlooking the service driveway, luxury by some standards, a cage by others. The dinner party was breaking up. She could hear voices in the foyer, guests departing, car engines starting, the wealthy men in their expensive suits, going home to families who didn't know how their comfort was purchased. Her cheek had developed a spectacular bruise, purple and yellow spreading across dark skin. It would be worse tomorrow. Christina stripped off her uniform and stood in front of the small mirror mounted above the dresser. She examined herself with the clinical detachment she'd learned over years of competition. At 35, her body had changed from her fighting days, softer in places, the definition less pronounced, but underneath, everything still worked. The fast twitch muscle fibers, the kinetic chain from ground to fist, the neural pathways that controlled balance and timing and explosive power. She dropped into a fighting stance, front leg light, back leg loaded, hands up. She threw a jab fast, sharp, the way Master Park had taught her. The air whispered past her knuckles. Then a cross, a hook, a uppercut. Her body remembered. Of course it remembered. You didn't train 15 years and forget. The knowledge was written in her bones, encoded in muscle memory that ran deeper than conscious thought. Christina moved through combinations, Slowly at first, then faster. Jab, cross hook, uppercut, cross hook, spinning back kick, roundhouse. That Neiriochagi spinning hook kick that had killed David. She'd sworn never to throw it again. But promises made to ghosts were meaningless when the living needed protection. For an hour, Christina trained in silence. Push-ups until her arms shook, squats until her thighs burned, core work, planks, crunches, bicycle kicks, then stretching, the kind of deep flexibility training that hurt but was necessary for high kicks. Her body protested. 12 years of inactivity had consequences, but it also came back faster than she'd expected. Muscle memory was real. Neural pathways, once established, didn't completely disappear. And rage, cold, patient, focused rage, was better than any performance-enhancing drug. At midnight, Christina stopped. She was covered in sweat, breathing hard, but her mind was clear. Tomorrow, Chairman Kang was hosting another dinner, bigger than tonight's, more important guests. Something about a final deal, a Vancouver shipment, buyers coming from overseas. Tomorrow, those 7 women in the basement would either be sold or saved. Tomorrow, Christina Hale would stop being invisible. She pulled on dark clothes, black leggings, a black long-sleeve shirt. Then she moved through the mansion's corridors like a ghost, avoiding the security cameras she'd mapped over 8 months, using the blind spots she'd identified. The house was quiet. Kang had gone to bed an hour ago. Victor lived off-site. The overnight security guard, Tommy, the 18-year-old, was watching videos on his phone in the security office. Christina descended to the service level, then lower, to the corridor that led to the hidden basement. The door was locked. She'd expected this. From her pocket, Christina pulled a bobby pin she'd modified bent at a precise angle. The tip roughened against concrete. It wasn't a proper lockpick, but the electronic locks in the mansion had manual override cylinders, and Christina had spent 8 months watching how staff used them. 12 seconds. The lock clicked open. Christina descended the stairs, the motion sensor lights flickering on around her. At the bottom was the steel door, also locked, also pickable with enough patience. 23 seconds. The door swung open. 7 faces turned toward her, eyes widening with fear and exhaustion and something like desperate hope. They were all awake. Of course they were. Sleep was hard when you were waiting to be sold. Christina raised her hands, palms out, showing she was unarmed. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said quietly in English, then repeated it in Korean, Spanish, even attempted it in Vietnamese, though her pronunciation was terrible. "Who are you?" The oldest woman, mid-20s, Southeast Asian, with a scar across her cheek, stood up from her mattress. "Are you police?" "No." Christina shook her head. "I work here. I clean. But I found you 3 nights ago, and She paused, trying to find words adequate to the situation. "I can't let this continue." "So what?" Another woman, younger, Eastern European accent. "You tell police. They already paid. You run with us. We have no passports, no money, nowhere to go." "I know." Christina stepped into the room, letting the door close behind her. "Which is why we're not running." "Then what?" The scarred woman's eyes were hard, assessing. Survivor's eyes. "What can you do?" Christina met her gaze. "Tomorrow night, there's another dinner. Bigger. More important. The men who run this operation will all be here." She paused. "And, when they are, I'm going to take them apart." Silence. Then the youngest, maybe 17, Latina, with braids and terrified eyes, laughed, high and brittle. You are one woman. You work as maid. You think you fight them?" "Yes," Christina said simply. "They will kill you. They'll try." The scarred woman studied Christina for a long moment. "You have done this before? Fought?" "Yes." "Killed?" Christina hesitated. Then, "Once. By accident. A long time ago. Tomorrow will not be accident." "No," Christina agreed. "It won't." Another silence, heavier than the first. Finally, the scarred woman nodded slowly. "My name is Lan, from Vietnam. These are my sisters, not blood, but sisters. We were promised good jobs, waitressing, Cleaning. Normal work. We paid recruiters our family's savings. Her voice went flat. Then we woke up in shipping containers. Christina felt the rage kindle hotter in her chest. How long? 3 weeks. They are still preparing us, breaking us. Tomorrow we meet the buyers. Not if I stop it first. And if you fail, one of the other women, quiet until now, mixed race, maybe 18, spoke up. If you fail, we die. Maybe not tomorrow, but soon. They do not leave witnesses. Then I won't fail, Christina said. How can you be sure? Because, Christina straightened, letting them see her posture shift, letting them see the fighter underneath the maid's uniform. I used to be very good at this. And angry people are always dangerous. But angry people with training. She smiled without humor. We're lethal. Lan watched her for another moment, then nodded. Okay. Tomorrow night. What do you need from us? Stay down here. Stay quiet. No matter what you hear, fighting, screaming, anything, don't come upstairs. When it's safe, I'll come get you. And if you don't come? Christina didn't answer that question, because if she didn't come, they'd know she failed, and they'd know what came next. Instead, she said, be ready to run. I'll get your passports. I'll call people who can help real people, not police on Kang's payroll. But you need to be ready. We have been ready for 3 weeks, Lan said quietly. Christina nodded and turned to leave. Lan's voice stopped her. Why? Why you do this? You don't know us. Christina looked back at the 7 women. 7 lives. 7 futures stolen. 7 people who'd believed in opportunity and found only horror. Because someone should, she said. And I'm tired of being quiet. She left them there and made her way back upstairs, her mind already running through tomorrow's plan. 20 men. Multiple trained security. Weapons. Certainly, the odds were objectively terrible. But Christina had learned something in her competitive years, something that had carried her to Olympic qualifying rounds before everything fell apart. Odds didn't matter when you stopped fighting to win and started fighting to survive. And tomorrow, Christina wasn't fighting for herself. She was fighting for 7 women who couldn't, which made her the most dangerous person in that mansion. They just didn't know it yet. Is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than break time. Wednesday morning arrived with California sunshine that felt obscene given what it illuminated. Christina woke at 5 a.m. from a dream about David Park. In the dream, he wasn't dead. He was standing on the training mat, blood running from his nose, asking her why she'd left Korea, why she'd abandoned Taekwondo, why she'd let them win. She showered in cold water until her skin felt raw and the dream faded. The house stirred to life around her. Rosa in the kitchen preparing breakfast. Marcus reviewing staff schedules. Tommy yawning through the end of his security shift before the day guard, a man named Jackson, who actually knew his job, took over. Chairman Kang appeared at 7:30 a.m., already dressed in a tailored suit, already on his phone. Christina served him breakfast, Korean traditional with American touches. Rice, soup, grilled fish, coffee that cost $40 a pound. He didn't acknowledge her presence. She was invisible again. Useful. Forgettable. Perfect. At 9 a.m., Victor Park arrived with 3 other men. Christina recognized from previous visits. James Song, Robert Kim, David Park. They congregated in Kang's private office. Door closed, voices muffled. Christina cleaned the hallway outside the office. Slowly, thoroughly, close enough to hear fragments of conversation. Vancouver shipment confirmed for tonight. Buyers. Flying in from Tokyo and Seoul. Premium product. Already vetted. Secondary location first, then transfer. Christina's hands moved automatically, polishing the same section of banister 3 times while she memorized every word. At 10:15 a.m., Kang emerged from his office and found her there. Christina. She straightened immediately. Yes, Chairman? Tonight's dinner is crucial. Our most important clients will be attending. Everything must be perfect. His eyes traveled over her face, pausing on the bruise. Perhaps you should wear makeup. You look damaged. Christina kept her voice neutral. Of course, Chairman. I apologize for the appearance. Good. Kang nodded. The guests arrive at 7. Full formal service. Victor will provide you with the menu. Any mistakes tonight, any at all, will result in immediate termination. Do you understand? Yes, Chairman. Excellent. He paused, studying her with something like curiosity. You're very obedient, Christina. It's refreshing. Most American workers have too much pride. I just appreciate the opportunity, Chairman. Yes, I'm sure you do. Kang walked away, already back on his phone, already forgetting her. Christina returned to cleaning, but her mind was racing. Tonight. It was happening tonight. The shipment from Vancouver, the 7 women in the basement plus others. Probably. The buyers from overseas. The final transaction that would determine their fates. And somewhere in the middle of that transaction, Christina was going to introduce herself properly. Not as the quiet maid who bowed and apologized. As the fighter who'd stood on mats in Seoul with her name whispered like prophecy. As the woman who'd killed someone by accident and learned exactly how fragile the human body was. As the person who was done being invisible. At noon, Christina went to the kitchen, under the pretext of helping with meal preparation. Rosa was chopping vegetables, humming quietly to herself. Rosa, Christina said casually. What time do you leave tonight? Dinner doesn't finish until 11 usually. Rosa didn't look up from her work. Why? Just curious. Christina began organizing spices. You have family in Los Angeles? 3 daughters. They live with my sister in Koreatown while I work. Rosa finally glanced up. That bruise looks terrible. You should file a complaint. With who? Christina smiled without humor. Kang owns half the lawyers in LA. Then you should quit. Find better work. I will, Christina said quietly. After tonight. Something in her tone made Rosa pause. What happens tonight? I don't know yet. Christina met her eyes. But Rosa, when dinner starts, you should leave. Make an excuse. Family emergency. Anything. Just don't be here. Christina, please. Christina's voice was soft but urgent. Trust me, something bad might happen, and I don't want you caught in it. Rosa studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. I have sister who's been sick. I can say she called. Good. Tell Marcus the same thing. Tell him to take Tommy with him. And you? I have something to finish first. Rosa's eyes were knowing. The women in the basement. You know about them. Christina went very still. You know? I've worked here 3 years. Of course I know. Rosa's voice was bitter. But what can I do? I have daughters. If I talk, if I call police, I'm next. Or my family is. I understand. And Christina did. Fear was a powerful motivator. Silence was survival. But silence was also complicity. And tonight, someone needed to stop being silent. At 2 p.m., Christina made her way down to the gym, in the mansion's lower level, a space rarely used by Kang or his associates. Filled with expensive equipment that gathered dust, she locked the door behind her. For 2 hours, Christina trained, not cautiously, not holding back, but with the full intensity she'd used 15 years ago, when Olympic qualifying rounds were approaching, and every movement needed to be perfect. She started with shadow boxing, combinations, footwork, the fundamental building blocks of striking, jab, jab, cross, hook to the body, uppercut, spinning back fist. Her body remembered. The muscle memory was still there, buried under 12 years of ordinary life, but not gone. Never gone. Then kicks. Front kick ap chagi, roundhouse dolio chagi, side kick yop chagi, and finally, the kick she'd sworn never to throw again, the Nereo chagi, spinning hook kick, the kick that had killed David Park. Christina set up a heavy bag in the corner. She positioned herself, breathing steadily, feeling the old readiness flow through her body. Then she spun, her back leg whipped around, body rotating, momentum building, and her heel connected with the bag at head height with a crack that echoed through the gym. The bag swung wildly on its chain. Christina stood in the follow-through position, breathing hard, staring at the impact point. Still had it. Still had the power, the speed, the precision that had made her dangerous. She threw the kick again, and again, and again, until her hip was burning and sweat was pouring down her face, and she was absolutely certain she could do it when it mattered, when bodies weren't bags and mistakes weren't forgiven. At 4:30 p.m., Christina showered and returned to her room. She put on her uniform burgundy dress, white apron, white cap, everything proper, everything expected. Then she added something new. From the back of her dresser drawer, she pulled out a small package wrapped in cloth. Inside was a cell phone, a cheap burner she'd bought 2 months ago with cash, never registered, never used, and a piece of paper with 2 phone numbers. One was for the FBI's Los Angeles field office. The other was for a reporter at the Los Angeles Times who'd written extensively about human trafficking. Christina had been preparing for this moment longer than she'd admitted to herself. She'd been gathering evidence, taking photos of documents left carelessly in Kang's office, recording license plates of suspicious vehicles, mapping the mansion's security system. Tonight, when it was over, she'd send everything. But first, she needed to survive. At 5:45 p.m., Christina made one more trip to the basement. The steel door was locked, as always. She picked it again, faster this time, 9 seconds, and descended the stairs. 7 faces turned toward her, more alert now. Ready. Tonight, Christina said without preamble. The buyers arrive at 8. The transaction happens during or after dinner. I'm going to stop it before then. How? Lan asked. By making sure they're all too busy to conduct business. Busy with what? Christina smiled thinly. With me. She pulled 7 pieces of paper from her pocket, hand-drawn maps of the mansion. These show the service corridors. When you hear fighting, and you will hear fighting, wait 10 minutes. Then move to this exit. She pointed to the loading dock. There'll be a vehicle there. Keys will be in the ignition. Drive to this address. She handed Lan a separate paper. It's a church in Koreatown. Father Martinez runs it. He helps people who need to disappear. Tell him Christina sent you. And our passports? One of the other women asked. Kang keeps them in his office safe. I'll get them before I start. Christina met each woman's eyes in turn. If something goes wrong, if I don't make it, you run anyway. Don't wait for me. Just run. We will not leave you, Lan said firmly. Yes, you will. Christina's voice was hard. Because I'm not doing this so you can sacrifice yourselves for me. I'm doing this so you can survive. Understand? Silence. Then slow nods. Good. Christina turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Whatever happens tonight, whatever you see, remember this. I'm not a hero. I'm just tired of being scared. You don't seem scared, the youngest woman said quietly. Christina looked back at her. Everyone's scared. The question is whether you let fear control you or use it as fuel. She left them there and made her way back upstairs, her heart rate steady, her mind clear. In 2 hours, Chairman Kang's empire was going to fall, and Christina Hale was going to be the earthquake that brought it down. Is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than in 6 p.m. The sun was setting over Los Angeles, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and gold. From the mansion's windows, the city looked beautiful, peaceful, like nothing terrible ever happened there. Christina knew better. She stood in the service corridor outside Kang's office, waiting. Marcus had sent Rosa home with her fabricated family emergency. Tommy had gone with her. Marcus had convinced him that reduced security wouldn't matter with so many of Kang's people present. Smart. That left only Jackson, the day security guard, who'd be focused on the front entrance when guests arrived. At 6:15 p.m., Kang and Victor emerged from the office together, deep in conversation. They moved toward the front of the mansion, leaving the office unattended. Christina moved quickly. The office door was locked, but she'd practiced this. 15 seconds with her modified bobby pin, and she was inside. Kang's office was opulent dark wood, leather chairs, original artwork on the walls that was probably worth 6 figures. The safe was behind a painting of a Korean landscape, because wealthy men were predictable in their lack of imagination. Christina pulled the painting aside. The safe was a digital model, expensive, modern, supposedly impenetrable. But Christina had spent 8 months watching Kang enter the code when he thought no one was paying attention. She'd memorized it 3 months ago, had practiced the sequence in her head until it was automatic. Ba ar chi su, I jo ar san. The safe clicked open. Inside were documents, cash, jewelry, and a manila folder containing 7 passports. Christina grabbed them and stuffed them in her apron. Then she saw something else, a leather journal. She pulled it out, flipped through quickly. Records, detailed records of every transaction, every shipment, every payment, names, dates, amounts, everything. Christina photographed every page with her burner phone, working as fast as her hands could move. 2 minutes to document everything. Another 30 seconds to put it all back exactly as it had been. Then she closed the safe, rehung the painting, and slipped out of the office. Back in the service corridor, she breathed deeply, centering herself. Phase 1 complete. The passports were secured in a locked drawer in her room. The photographic evidence was on a phone that would be uploaded to the cloud the moment she had Wi-Fi access. Now came Phase 2, the dinner, and the reckoning. At 6:45 p.m., Christina was in the kitchen helping Rosa's replacement, a nervous young man named Carlos, who'd been hired that afternoon and had no idea what kind of house he was working in. Just focus on cooking, Christina told him gently. I'll handle service. You sure? Manager said there'd be. I'm sure. Carlos looked relieved and turned back to his work. Christina carried the first round of appetizers to the dining room, where the table was set for 30. More guests than last night. More witnesses to what was about to happen. They began arriving at 7. First came the regular associates. Victor, James Song, Robert Kim, David Park. Others Christina recognized from previous dinners. Then came new faces. Older men, well-dressed, speaking Japanese and Korean. The buyers, Christina assumed. Money men who dealt in human lives like they were commodities. And finally, at 7:15 p.m., came the politician from Sacramento, the one who'd talked about plausible deniability. He brought 3 others with him, men in expensive suits who had the comfortable look of people used to making rules rather than following them. 30 men total. Christina counted them as she moved through the room, serving drinks, taking coats, existing as part of the background. 30 men who'd decided that power gave them the right to destroy lives. 30 men who were about to learn otherwise. At 7:30 p.m., Kang stood to address his guests. Welcome, he said in English, then repeated it in Korean. Tonight we celebrate a significant expansion of our operations. New partners from overseas, new territories, new opportunities. Applause around the table. The merchandise has been prepared according to specifications. Kang continued. After dinner, our buyers will have the opportunity to inspect and select. Prices are as discussed. Payment will be transferred tonight. More applause. Someone made a joke in Japanese that Christina didn't understand, but that made others laugh. She moved along the perimeter of the room, refilling water glasses. Her hands steady. In her pocket was the burner phone. In the locked drawer in her room were 7 passports. In the basement were 7 women waiting for salvation. And in Christina's body was 15 years of training that had been dormant but never dead. At 8 p.m., Christina served the main course, an elaborate Korean barbecue that Carlos had somehow managed to prepare, despite his inexperience. The guests ate and drank and talked about business, about territories and shipments and profit margins, about the merchandise, like they were discussing cars or furniture. Christina listened, photographed mental notes, memorized faces, and waited. At 8:30 p.m., Victor stood and approached her position near the kitchen door. Christina, the chairman wants you. She followed him to where Kang sat at the head of the table, surrounded by sycophants and monsters. Yes, chairman? My guests have expressed interest in seeing the merchandise before we conduct final negotiations, Kang said. You will escort them to the viewing area in 30 minutes. Make sure the subjects are presentable. Christina's pulse jumped. They were moving up the timeline. The transaction was happening sooner than expected. Of course, Chairman. She bowed. Should I prepare them now? Yes. And Christina? Kang's smile was cruel. Make sure they understand the importance of good behavior. Damaged merchandise loses value. Laughter around the table. Christina bowed again and left the room, her mind racing. 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, these men would go to the basement expecting to inspect human beings like livestock. Instead, they were going to find something very different. They were going to find a woman who'd been silent for 12 years. A woman who'd learned to be invisible because visibility meant vulnerability. A woman who'd killed someone by accident and learned exactly how fragile the human body was. A woman who was done being afraid. Christina moved through the service corridors, down the stairs, to the locked door. She picked it one last time and descended to face the 7 women who'd been waiting. It's time, she said simply. Lan stood, her expression hard. What do we do? Exactly what I told you before. When you hear fighting, wait 10 minutes. Then run. Christina handed her the keys to one of the mansion's vehicles, a SUV she'd taken from the garage earlier. The passports are in the back seat. Go to Father Martinez. He'll help you disappear. And you? Christina smiled without humor. I'll be busy. She led them through the basement corridor to a storage room near the service elevator. Stay here. Don't make noise. Don't come out until you're sure it's safe. How will we know it's safe? One of the younger women asked. You'll know, Christina said, because everyone who wants to hurt you will be unconscious or arrested. She left them there and returned to the main level. 8:55 p.m. 5 minutes until the guests came downstairs expecting merchandise. 5 minutes until Christina stopped being invisible. She moved to the ballroom where the dinner party was wrapping up. Men stood in clusters, drinks in hand, discussing business. The buyers looked eager. The associates looked pleased. Kang looked triumphant. Victor approached her. It's time. Bring them to the gathering room. Actually, Christina said quietly, there's a problem. Victor frowned. What problem? Come with me. I need to show you. She led him away from the crowd, toward the service corridor. Victor followed, annoyed but curious. They reached a quiet hallway. Christina stopped and turned to face him. What's the problem? Victor demanded. The problem, Christina said, her voice changing, losing the submissive softness, gaining an edge that made Victor's eyes widen, is that I'm not doing this anymore. What are you? Christina moved. 12 years since she'd thrown a real strike at a real person. But 12 years was nothing to 15 years of training. Her jab was textbook perfect, left hand snapping out, connecting with Victor's nose, feeling cartilage crunch. He stumbled back, blood exploding from his nostrils. Before he could recover, she followed with a right cross to his solar plexus, all her weight behind it, driving the air from his lungs. Victor dropped to his knees, gasping. Christina stepped behind him and wrapped her arm around his throat, a rear-naked choke, learned from military training. She applied pressure to the carotid arteries, cutting off blood flow to his brain. He struggled for 8 seconds, then went limp. Christina lowered him to the floor. He'd wake up in a few minutes with a headache and a broken nose, but he'd live. 1 down, 29 to go. Christina straightened, feeling something unlock in her body. The old readiness, the fighter's calm, the absolute certainty that she was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what needed to be done. She pulled off her apron and cap, tossed them aside. Underneath, her uniform was still burgundy and white, still modest, still a maid's outfit. But when Christina Hale walked back toward the ballroom, she wasn't a maid anymore. She was a weapon, and she was about to remind 30 men what happened when you mistook silence for weakness. His less than break time equals 85 seconds. His greater than his less than break time equals 85 seconds. His greater than his less than break time equals 85 seconds. His greater than his less than break time equals 85 seconds. His greater than... Christina stood at the entrance to the ballroom for 3 seconds, studying the room with the tactical awareness she'd learned on Olympic training mats. 30 men, various sizes, ages, fitness levels. Most were soft, wealthy men who paid others to do violence for them, but at least 6 were clearly security or enforcers. Bigger, alert, the kind who'd trained to hurt people. Those were the ones she'd need to neutralize first. The room's layout favored her. 2 entrances, one she was standing in, one on the far side. Limited furniture to obstruct movement. Open space in the center, where they'd need to come to her. Christina took a breath. 4 in. 7 hold. 8 out. Then she walked into the room. "Excuse me, Chairman," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the space. No longer soft, no longer deferential, just clear and strong and absolutely certain. Conversations died. Heads turned. Kang looked up from where he'd been talking to one of the Japanese buyers, irritation flashing across his face. "What is it? Where's Victor?" "Victor's taking a nap," Christina said. "He'll wake up in a few minutes with a broken nose and a headache, but he'll live." Silence. Then Kang's expression shifted from irritation to confusion, to something like amusement. "What did you say?" "I said Victor's unconscious in the hallway. I put him there." Christina took 3 steps into the room, her posture changing, weight on the balls of her feet, hands loose at her sides, ready. "And I'm not going to bring anyone to inspect human merchandise, because that's not happening tonight." The silence stretched. Then someone laughed James' song from his position near the bar. "Is this a joke? Did Victor put you up to this?" "Not a joke." Christina's eyes swept the room, cataloging targets. "You have 7 women locked in your basement, trafficked, held against their will, scheduled to be sold tonight. I'm here to tell you that's not happening." Kang set down his drink carefully. His face had gone very still. "You're fired. Leave now, and I won't have you killed." "I'm not leaving, and you're not killing anyone." Christina smiled without humor. "But you are going to spend the next 10 to 20 years in federal prison. All of you." "She's insane," David Park said, from somewhere to her right. "Someone call security." "Security's not coming," Christina interrupted. "Jackson's still at the front gate. Victor's unconscious. Tommy went home. It's just us." One of the enforcers, a massive Korean man Christina had seen before, known only as Big Park, started moving toward her from the left side of the room. Professional, cautious. He'd clearly done this before. "One chance," Christina said, speaking directly to Kang now. "You can all sit down and wait quietly for the FBI to arrive, or you can try to stop me and learn why I spent 15 years training to hurt people." "Who the hell do you think you are?" Kang's voice was incredulous. "Christina Hale, former Olympic track Taekwondo competitor, former Korean military combatives instructor, former champion." She paused. "Current very angry woman who's done being quiet." Big Park lunged. Christina moved. The muscle memory took over 12 years, might as well have been 12 minutes. She sidestepped his rush, grabbed his extended arm, used his momentum to throw him past her. As he stumbled, she drove her knee into his kidney, precise, brutal, disabling without permanent damage. Big Park went down. 2 seconds. 1 opponent neutralized. The room erupted. 3 more security types rushed her simultaneously. Christina's training clicked into place like a well-oiled machine. The first man came high, probably going for a grapple. Christina ducked under his arms and drove her palm heel into his sternum. Heard ribs crack. He folded. The second came low, trying to tackle her legs. She sprawled back, drove her elbow into the base of his skull as he passed under her. He hit the floor face first and didn't move. The third was smarter, hung back, pulled out a knife. "Stop moving or I'll cut you." Christina evaluated him. Young, mid-20s, holding the knife wrong blade down, amateur grip. "You should run," she told him calmly. He lunged. Christina caught his wrist, twisted it outward and down, heard the small bones crack. The knife clattered to the floor. She swept his legs and followed him down, driving her knee into his solar plexus. He stopped moving. Total elapsed time, 11 seconds. 4 opponents down. The room had gone silent again. Christina stood in the center of the ballroom, breathing steady, her uniform torn at the shoulder where someone had grabbed her. blood on her knuckles, not hers. "Anyone else?" she asked conversationally. Kang's face had gone pale. "Kill her," he ordered. "Someone kill her." 3 more men moved. 2 had guns. This changed the equation. Christina dove behind the serving table as the first shot rang out loud, deafening in the enclosed space. Crystal glasses exploded. Someone screamed. Training took over. Christina grabbed the table and flipped it, creating cover. Then she moved, fast and low, while they were still oriented on where she'd been. The first gunman was tracking her previous position. Christina came up beside him, grabbed his gun hand, twisted the weapon away while driving her knee into his groin. He dropped. She kicked the gun across the floor. The second gunman was better, already turning, bringing his weapon to bear. Christina threw a champagne bottle. It hit him in the face. Not hard enough to knock him out, but enough to disrupt his aim. The shot went wide. Christina closed the distance, grabbed his gun with both hands, thumbs on top of his, preventing him from firing. Twisted hard. The weapon came free. She reversed it, using it as a club, smashed it into his temple. He dropped. Christina stood holding the gun, breath coming harder now, adrenaline singing through her system. 7 down, 23 to go. But most of them weren't fighters. They were scrambling for exits now, phones out, trying to call for help. "Everyone stop!" Christina's voice cut through the chaos. She didn't point the gun at anyone, just held it visibly. "Sit down. Right now. Anyone who runs, anyone who tries to call for help, will regret it." No one moved. I said sit down. They sat, some on chairs, some on the floor, all of them staring at her like she was a demon that had materialized in their perfectly controlled world. Kang remained standing, his face twisted with rage. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Any idea who these people are? Who I am?" "Yes," Christina said simply. "You're human traffickers, murderers, rapists. You're men who thought power gave you the right to destroy lives." She took a step toward him. "But you're wrong. Power doesn't give you rights. It gives you responsibility. And you failed. I will destroy you," Kang said quietly. "Your family. Everyone you've ever loved. I will." Christina crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and hit him. Not a slap, not a shove. A proper strike-right cross, full extension, all her weight behind it. Kang's head snapped back. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. The room went completely silent. Christina stood over him, breathing hard, feeling the rage finally start to cool into something colder, more dangerous. "Does anyone else want to threaten me?" she asked the room. No one spoke. "Good." Christina pulled out her burner phone. "Because I'm going to call the FBI now, and you're all going to sit there quietly while I do. If anyone moves, if anyone tries anything, I will hurt you in ways that will require months of physical therapy. Understood?" 30 pairs of eyes stared at her. Most nodded. Christina dialed the FBI. The call connected on the second ring. "Federal Bureau of Investigation, Los Angeles Field Office. My name is Christina Hale," she said clearly. "I'm at 1247 Bellagio Drive in Beverly Hills. I'm currently in a room with 30 men involved in human trafficking, including Chairman Kang Min-jae. I have 7 victims secured. I have photographic evidence of their entire operation, and I have approximately 5 minutes before someone tries something stupid, so you should probably send units now." A pause on the other end. "Ma'am, is this a prank? Check your databases for Kang Min-jae. Check for organized crime. Check for trafficking." Christina's voice was calm. "Then send every available unit, because if you don't, these men walk, and 7 women die." Another pause. Then, "Units are en route. Stay on the line." Christina stayed on the line. She stood in the center of the ballroom, holding a gun she didn't intend to use, surrounded by men who'd built empires on suffering, and for the first time in 12 years, Christina Hale felt like herself again. Not invisible, not silent, just herself, and it felt right. Is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. is greater than. The siren started 6 minutes later. In that 6 minutes, Christina had watched 30 men come to terms with the fact that their carefully constructed world was collapsing. Some tried to negotiate. Robert Kim offered her $1 million, $2 million, $5 million. Name your price. We can make this go away. Christina didn't respond. David Park tried reasoning. You don't understand. These women, they volunteered. They knew what they were signing up for. It's not trafficking if they agreed. They didn't agree to being locked in a basement, Christina said flatly. The Japanese buyers tried to leave. Christina moved to block the door, and they retreated back to their seats. Only Kang remained on the floor where she'd dropped him, bleeding from his mouth, staring at her with something between hatred and disbelief. How? He finally asked. How are you trained like this? You're a maid. I was a maid, Christina corrected. Before that, I was many things, including someone you shouldn't have hit. The sirens grew louder. Through the window, Christina could see flashing lights approaching up the long driveway. Multiple vehicles. FBI, LAPD, probably ATF and DEA too, given the scope of Kang's operations. She'd done it. Actually done it. The front doors burst open. Footsteps thundered through the mansion. FBI. Nobody move. Agents in tactical gear flooded the ballroom, weapons raised, shouting commands. Hands up! Everyone on the ground! Now! Christina set down her gun carefully and raised her hands. Christina Hale. I'm the one who called. I'm unarmed now. An agent moved toward her cautiously, a woman, 40s, with sharp eyes and the bearing of someone used to command. You, Christina? Yes. You said something about victims. Storage room near the service elevator. 7 women. They have their passports now. They'll need medical attention, trauma counseling, and protection. The agent spoke into her radio, dispatching units. Then she looked back at Christina, taking in her torn uniform, her bruised knuckles, the men groaning on the floor. You do all this yourself? Yes. How? Taekwondo. 15 years of training, 12 years of hiding it. Christina lowered her hands slowly. Can I put these down? The agent nodded. We'll need a full statement. But first, she gestured to the room. Walk me through what happened. Christina did. Quickly, efficiently. The trafficking operation, the locked basement, the dinner party, her decision to intervene, the fight. More agents were moving through the room now, cuffing suspects, calling paramedics, documenting evidence. Kang was being helped to his feet, blood streaming from his nose, his empire crumbling in real time. You have evidence? The agent asked. You mentioned photographic evidence. Christina handed over her burner phone. Every page of Kang's personal ledger. Names, dates, transactions. Everything you need to dismantle his entire organization. The agent's eyebrows rose as she scrolled through the photos. This is comprehensive. I had 8 months to prepare. And you waited until tonight because? Because tonight the victims were going to be sold. Tomorrow would have been too late. Christina met the agent's eyes. I know I broke laws. Assault, breaking and entering, maybe more. But I couldn't watch them take those women and do nothing. The agent studied her for a long moment. You're aware you could face charges? Yes. You're aware you might have just committed a dozen felonies? Yes. The agent's expression softened slightly. You're also aware you just saved 7 lives and handed us the biggest trafficking bust in LA history. Christina said nothing. We'll need to take you in for questioning, the agent continued. Standard procedure. But between you and me, she glanced at Kang, now handcuffed and furious. I'd say you did the right thing. They brought the 7 women up from the basement at 9:47 p.m. Christina was standing in the foyer, flanked by FBI agents, when Lan emerged at the head of the group. Their eyes met. Lan's were wet with tears. You did it, she whispered. We did it, Christina corrected. The women were ushered past, toward waiting ambulances. Medical personnel rushed forward with blankets and water. Victim services coordinators appeared with clipboards and gentle voices. Christina watched them go, feeling something unlock in her chest that had been tight for 12 years. Since David Park died, since she'd left Korea in disgrace, since she'd learned that the world wasn't fair and justice was something that happened to other people. Tonight, justice had happened. Not perfect, not complete, but real. Miss Hale, the lead agent. She'd introduced herself as Special Agent. Martinez touched Christina's arm gently. We need to go. Am I under arrest? You're a witness. Possibly a suspect. Probably a hero. Martinez smiled slightly. Let's figure out which one when we get to the field office. They put Christina in the back of an FBI sedan. Not handcuffed, not treated like a criminal, but not free either. As they pulled away from the mansion, Christina looked back through the window. The whole estate was lit up like a carnival, police lights, FBI vehicles, news helicopters already circling overhead. By tomorrow, it would be everywhere. The story of the maid who took down a crime boss. The viral video of a black woman in a uniform standing over 30 criminals. The feel-good narrative about justice prevailing. But Christina knew the truth was more complicated. Justice hadn't prevailed tonight. She had, through violence and rage and skills she'd buried because they'd brought her nothing but pain. And she wasn't sure how she felt about that. Is less than break time equals 85 seconds? Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds? Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds? Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds? Is greater than FBI Los Angeles Field Office, Wilshire Boulevard, 11:43 p.m. Christina sat in an interview room that looked exactly like every interrogation room in every cop show she'd ever seen. Grey walls, metal table, one-way mirror, uncomfortable chairs bolted to the floor. Special Agent Martinez sat across from her, a legal pad and coffee between them. Another agent, younger, male, introduced as Agent Park, no relation to any of the Parks in Kang's organization, stood near the door. For the record, Martinez began, you're not under arrest. You're here voluntarily to provide a statement. You can leave at any time. You can request an attorney at any time. Do you understand? Yes. Do you want an attorney? Christina considered this. Do I need one? That depends on what you tell us. Martinez leaned back in her chair. Let's start simple. Tell me about yourself. Before tonight. Before the mansion. Who is Christina Hale? So Christina told her. About growing up military, her father stationed in Seoul, teaching Taekwondo to soldiers, passing his love of the art to his daughter. About training from age 14 under Master Park Sung-ho, one of the finest instructors in Korea. About competing nationally, then internationally. About Olympic qualifying rounds. About David Park. About the accident that killed him. About the scandal that followed. I didn't mean to hurt him, Christina said quietly. We were training late. No protective gear. I threw a spinning hook kick and connected wrong. He fell, hit his head on the mat's concrete foundation. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was gone. Martinez wrote notes. The investigation cleared you? Officially. But his family didn't accept that. They pushed a narrative that I'd been jealous, aggressive, violent. The media ran with it. My sponsors dropped me. My Olympic dreams died with him. So you left Korea. I left everything. Came back to the US. Took care of my dying mother. Worked whatever jobs I could find. Tried to become someone who didn't fight. But you couldn't, Agent Park observed from his position by the door. Because you spent 8 months watching Kang's operation and finally decided to do something. I spent 8 months being invisible, Christina corrected. Then I found the basement. And being invisible meant being complicit. Martinez tapped her pen against her notepad. Walk me through tonight again. Every detail. Who you hit. How. Why. Christina did. Clinically. Precisely. The way she'd document a sparring session. Victor rear naked choke. Non-lethal. Big Park kidney strike. Temporarily disabling. The 3 security personnel sternum strike. Elbow to skull. Knee to solar plexus. The knife-wielding guard wrist lock, leg sweep, knee strike, the 2 gunmen disarm, improvised weapon, head strike, Kang, right cross, full power, unconscious. You're very calm about this, Martinez observed. You put 7 men in the hospital, broke multiple bones, and potentially could have killed several of them. That doesn't bother you. It does, Christina said honestly. But what bothers me more is that I hesitated, that I spent 8 months watching evil and did nothing until it was almost too late. You were gathering evidence. I was being scared. Christina met Martinez's eyes. I let fear control me, just like I did after David died, just like I've done for 12 years. Tonight, I finally stopped. Martinez studied her for a long moment. Then she set down her pen. Okay, off the record for a minute. What you did tonight was reckless, dangerous, and probably violated half a dozen federal laws. You could face assault charges, breaking and entering, theft of documents, maybe more. Christina nodded. I understand. However, Martinez leaned forward. You also saved 7 lives, documented a criminal enterprise, and handed us enough evidence to dismantle a trafficking network that spans 3 states and 2 countries. And you did it without killing anyone, which shows remarkable restraint given your training. What does that mean? It means I'm recommending the DA decline to prosecute. It means you're going home tonight. And it means, Martinez smiled slightly, you might want to get a good lawyer anyway, because Kang's people will try to retaliate through civil suits. I don't have money for a good lawyer. You won't need it. Trust me. By tomorrow morning, every civil rights attorney in California will be calling you. You're about to be famous. Christina felt her stomach tighten. I don't want to be famous. Too late. Agent Park pulled out his phone, showed her the screen. You're already trending. Someone recorded part of the fight. It's everywhere. The video was shaky shot from a phone by one of Kang's guests who'd apparently kept recording even while everything fell apart. It showed Christina moving through the room like water, precise and brutal and absolutely controlled. It showed her standing over Kang's unconscious body, phone to her ear, calling the FBI while surrounded by chaos. The caption read, Maid takes down Korean Mafia boss. Full video. 2 million views already. Christina closed her eyes. Perfect. There's something else you should know, Martinez said gently. The 7 women you saved, they're talking to media. Lan gave an interview an hour ago. She told them everything. About you finding them. About you promising to save them. About you risking your life when you could have just run. She shouldn't have, Christina said. She should disappear. They all should. Kang has people. Kang's people are all being rounded up as we speak. Agent Park interrupted. And the ones we haven't caught yet are running. You destroyed their entire power structure in one night. They're not thinking about revenge. They're thinking about survival. Christina wanted to believe that, but she'd seen enough of the world to know that revenge was patient, that powerful men didn't forgive being humiliated, that she'd made enemies tonight who wouldn't stop until she was dead or destroyed. But she'd also saved 7 women who'd been hours away from being sold into hell, and that made it worth it. They released her at 2:17 a.m. Martinez drove her personally, not back to the mansion, which was still a crime scene, but to a hotel in downtown Los Angeles that the FBI had arranged. Get some rest, Martinez said. We'll need more detailed statements tomorrow, probably testimony eventually, when this goes to trial. Thank you, Christina said, for believing me. Thank you for being brave. Martinez hesitated. What you did tonight, most people wouldn't. Most people would have stayed silent, stayed safe. I was silent for 12 years. It didn't make me safe, just invisible. Christina went up to her hotel room, 18th floor. Decent view of the city that had been her home and her prison for so many years. She showered for 40 minutes, washing away blood and sweat and the physical memory of violence. Then, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror, examining her reflection. Her cheek was still bruised from Kang's slap yesterday. Her knuckles were swollen and cut from tonight's fight. Her body ached in ways she'd forgotten were possible. But her eyes were clear for the first time in years. Christina Hale pulled on hotel sweatpants and a t-shirt, fell into bed, and slept without dreaming of David Park for the first time since he died. Is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than is less than break time equals 85 seconds. Is greater than 3 months later. Downtown Los Angeles. Spring sunshine bright against glass buildings and morning traffic. Christina stood outside the federal courthouse, wearing a suit she'd never owned before purchased last week, with money from a fund that had been set up by donors who'd read her story. Navy blue. Professional. The kind of suit that said, "You mattered." Inside, Chairman Kang Min-jae and 17 of his associates were facing justice. 3 months of investigation had turned Christina's evidence into indictments. Federal trafficking charges, racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy. If convicted, and they would be convicted, the evidence was overwhelming. They'd spend the rest of their lives in prison. Ready? Agent Martinez stood beside her, also in a suit, ready to testify. "Yes," Christina said. They walked inside together. The trial had been ongoing for 2 weeks. Christina had already testified twice, once about what she'd witnessed at the mansion, once about the fight itself. Today was closing arguments. She sat in the gallery, watching the prosecutors make their case. They used her photographs. They called the 7 women she'd saved as witnesses. They presented financial records that showed millions of dollars earned through human suffering. And they showed the video, the one that had gone viral, the one that showed Christina Hale in a maid's uniform taking down 30 men. The jury watched in silence. Christina watched them watch it. She'd seen the video 1,000 times in the past 3 months. It was everywhere. News outlets, social media, documentary teams had approached her. Book deals had been offered. A producer from Netflix had called about a series. She'd declined everything, because this wasn't entertainment. This was 7 women who'd been saved and thousands more who hadn't. This was a system that failed to protect vulnerable people and required desperate measures. This was Christina learning that silence wasn't safety, it was complicity. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. They returned guilty verdicts on all counts. Kang showed no emotion as he was led away in handcuffs, but his eyes found Christina's across the courtroom, and in them, she saw hatred that would never fade. She met his gaze steadily. Let him hate her. She'd survived worse. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Cameras, microphones, questions shouted over each other. "Christina, how do you feel about the verdict? Are you worried about retaliation? What's next for you?" Christina had prepared a statement. Martinez had helped her write it. But standing there, surrounded by media, she set aside the prepared words. 3 months ago, she said, her voice clear and strong, I found 7 women locked in a basement. They'd been trafficked, held prisoner, scheduled to be sold, and I had to make a choice: stay silent and stay safe, or speak up and risk everything. The reporters fell silent, cameras rolling. I chose to speak up. And yes, it was dangerous. Yes, I broke laws. Yes, I used violence that I'd spent 12 years trying to forget. But those women are alive today because someone decided their lives mattered more than rules. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who got tired of being quiet. And I want everyone watching this to understand something. Silence doesn't keep you safe. Silence keeps systems functioning that shouldn't function. Silence protects people who should be stopped. Christina looked directly into the nearest camera. If you see something wrong, genuinely wrong, not just inconvenient or uncomfortable, but wrong, you have a choice. You can stay silent and protect yourself, or you can speak up and risk everything. I'm not telling you what to choose. I'm just telling you that I chose, and I'd do it again. She walked away then, ignoring follow-up questions, ignoring the reporters calling her name. Martinez caught up with her at the corner. That was good. It was honest, Christina corrected. What now? What's your plan? Christina looked out at Los Angeles, this city of angels and demons, opportunity and exploitation, where millions of people lived and worked and struggled and dreamed. I'm going to teach, she said finally. Teach what? Self-defense, Taekwondo, confidence. Christina smiled slightly. There are women in this city who need to learn they're not helpless, that they have power, even when the world tells them they don't. You opening a dojo, something like that. She had the money now, not from the lawsuit settlements, which she'd donated to trafficking victim services, but from the fund donors had set up, enough to rent a space, buy equipment, start something real, enough to become visible in a way that mattered. 6 months later, Koreatown, Los Angeles. A converted warehouse on 8th Street. The sign above the door read, Hale Academy, Self-Defense and Martial Arts. Inside, 20 women ranged in age from 16 to 64 were learning basic Taekwondo, front stance, jab, cross, front kick. Christina moved among them, correcting form, offering encouragement, teaching them what her father and Master Park had taught her, that discipline was power, that technique was freedom, that knowing how to fight meant never having to be afraid. Better, she told a 40-year-old woman named Maria, who'd been in an abusive relationship before finding the academy. Your stance is stronger. You're not apologizing with your body anymore. Maria smiled, sweat running down her face, and threw another combination. In the corner of the room, Lan watched from a folding chair. She'd become Christina's assistant instructor, the two of them teaching together. Both women who'd survived different types of trafficking, both determined to help others escape. After class, Christina's students lingered to talk, to joke, to exist in a space where they were valued and powerful and seen. This, Christina thought, was better than fame, better than viral videos or news coverage or documentary deals. This was real. She was teaching women to defend themselves. Yes, but more than that, she was teaching them what she'd learned the hard way. That silence wasn't safety. That invisibility wasn't protection. That being quiet didn't keep you from being hurt, it just made sure no one noticed when you were. And that sometimes, the most dangerous thing in the world was a woman who'd been silent too long and finally decided to speak. That night, Christina returned to her apartment, a modest one-bedroom in mid-Wilshire. Nothing fancy, but hers. No mansion, no wealthy employers, no one to bow to or apologize to or shrink herself for. She made dinner, did some paperwork for the academy, returned emails from students. At 9 p.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. Christina considered not answering, but she'd learned that facing things was better than avoiding them. Hello? Christina Hale. A man's voice, Korean accent, unfamiliar. Yes, who's this? My name is Yunsop Park. I was a student of Master Park Sung-ho, your former instructor. Christina's breath caught. Is he? He's alive, but he's old now. Sick. He saw the news about what you did in Los Angeles. He asked me to find you. Why? Because he wants to apologize. A pause. He says he should have believed you. About David. About the accident. He says he let fear and politics influence his judgment, and he wants you to know that before he dies. Christina sat down slowly, phone pressed to her ear, tears she didn't know she had running down her face. He also wanted me to tell you something else. Yunsop continued. He says, you were always meant to be a champion, not in competition, but in life. He says David would be proud of what you've become. For a long moment, Christina couldn't speak. Then, tell him I forgive him. And tell him I finally understand what he tried to teach me. What's that? That true strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up, even if it takes 12 years. They talked for a few more minutes. Yunsop gave her Master Park's contact information, promised to keep in touch. When Christina hung up, she stood and walked to her bedroom. In the closet, pushed far back, was a box she hadn't opened since leaving Korea. Inside were her old uniforms, her competition medals, photos from tournaments, the whole history of the person she'd been before David died. Christina pulled out her black belt worn soft from years of training, the fabric white at the edges where it had frayed. She tied it around her waist over her civilian clothes, feeling the familiar weight, the remembered discipline. Then she moved to the small, clear space in her living room and began running through forms the basic patterns she'd learned at 14, the advanced combinations that had carried her to Olympic qualifiers, the flowing sequences that made Taekwondo beautiful as well as deadly. Her body remembered everything, and for the first time since David Park died, Christina Hale practiced without guilt, without shame, without fear, just the pure joy of movement, of technique, of being exactly who she was meant to be. Outside, Los Angeles spread endlessly in all directions, millions of people living their lives, facing their struggles, making their choices about when to be silent and when to speak. Christina hoped they'd choose wisely. But if they didn't, if they found themselves trapped and afraid and desperate, she hoped they'd remember what she'd proven. That one person could make a difference. That silence wasn't safety. That sometimes you had to risk everything to save anyone. And that the most dangerous thing in the world was a woman who'd been invisible too long and finally decided to be seen. Christina finished her forms, bowed to the empty room the way her instructors had taught her, and felt at peace for the first time in 13 years. She was Christina Hale, former Olympic track fighter, former maid, current academy owner, current teacher, current survivor, and she was done being afraid. The end.